Minute or so to get started. Joins, they can just drop in. As you heard, the meeting is being recorded. We are so glad that you all have joined us today. My name is Dustin Robertson. I'm with Smart Growth America. And I'm doing the intro today because Diana is not able to make it. So we're just going to dive right in. My name is Dustin. Any of you all who have been on the past calls know that I'm with Smart Growth America, and we're really here to talk about complete streets. We've had a series of webinars over the past few months about complete streets, looking at it from all different angles. If you all saw the invite page for this event, I'll drop it in the chat now. You can see the past sessions. So we've had 3 sessions up until now. This is the 4th. But today, I'm really excited to say that we are expanding a little bit, going beyond just complete streets to also talk about Vision Zero. And I'm going to be joined by my esteemed friend, colleague, co-conspirator, Tiffany Smith from Vision Zero Network. And yeah, we're really excited to share what we know about these concepts with you, and also to hear some of your ideas, thoughts, questions as we move along. So to get started, I am going to share my screen, and we are going to dive into complete streets and Vision Zero. Any of you, if you've been on the past calls, I expect that you're an expert on complete streets now. You know them backwards and forwards. But we often get asked, what about Vision Zero? We've also heard that. Are those the same thing? Do they work together? Are they on conflict? So we thought it'd be really great to address these two together. And rather than just have me speak about Vision Zero, we thought we'd bring in Vision Zero Network itself. So here's our logos. So for a little context setting, and some of these things you'll be familiar with from your own work, or you've seen them in previous presentations or other publications. Why do we need to talk about these things at all? Well, the reason is because we have a crisis. We have a road safety crisis in this country. It is nationwide, but it is also, especially serious in particular places. Unfortunately, Tennessee is one of the more deadly states for pedestrian fatalities. You can see this map here that shows the pedestrian fatalities from 2013 to 2022. And you see it's across the state. It's rural, it's urban, it's big cities, it's smaller, medium, it's everywhere. And it's also in Nashville, right? This is a map showing 246 pedestrian deaths in the Nashville, Davidson, Murfreesboro, Franklin, Tennessee area. And again, you see concentrations in the most populated parts of the city, but it's certainly not only there. It's also in the suburbs. It's also in the surrounding neighborhoods and towns. And it's along particular routes, but it's such as these big highways, but it's also on smaller streets, more residential areas as well. So, this is a serious issue. These are pedestrian fatalities, but of course, if you are familiar at all with this kind of statistics, you know that these are just deaths. A map of serious injuries, minor injuries, close calls, all of which can have devastating impacts on individual people, on families, and on communities. This entire map would be blue if we were able to account for all of those things. And unfortunately, this is a situation that has not been improving over the years. It's getting worse. And it's also, so that map looked at the state and then the city level, but we can also go zoom in and really find particular places. And this is one that has been brought up in previous calls, previous Nashville webinars, and that is this intersection in the area around Harding Place and Nolensville Pike. This was brought up specifically by Ed. I'm not sure if Ed's on the call today, but It is an area that has been problematic over the past decade. You see here, there's been 13 pedestrian fatalities in just about a half-mile stretch up and down the northern side of this intersection and really all around. So this is an extremely problematic area, but unfortunately, it's not the only one in the city. And if we just look at it, we can see some clues as to what might be, making this such a dangerous place for pedestrians. We see huge roads, lots of parking lots where cars are going to be coming in and out. It's not a very pedestrian-friendly environment. And yet we have houses, we have hotels, we have lots of grocery stores, restaurants, lots of things that people are going to be, people are living and moving through this area. And yet it's really not designed for anybody excepting cars. Here's a street level view from Google of that particular intersection. And you can just see some of the signs that we, can tell here. Who is this designed for? And this is designed for cars, frankly. There are some people walking through it on faded crosswalks. But they have to cross huge distances. Vehicles are going to be moving at high speeds. And it's really, again, it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be dangerous for anybody outside of a vehicle. So this is just to kind of set the scene for where Nashville, but also, I mean, this screenshot could be from just about any city or town across the country. It's certainly not only Nashville. So what is our proposal? Well, I'm speaking on behalf of Smart North America, and what we talk about are complete streets. And this, for anybody who's joined the calls before, should be familiar. Complete streets are for everyone. So that's the basic one line is think complete streets, think everyone. The longer definition is complete streets is an approach to planning, designing, and building and operating streets that enables safe access for all people who need to use them, including pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders of all ages and abilities. So just in this picture here, we can see some of the elements that suggest this is a space that's been designed for the diversity of people who live and need to move through this area. So we have people of different ages, we have people moving for different purposes. Some are out for recreation, some may be commuting, bicyclists, people using mobility devices, people driving car, people riding scooters, etc. So this is just a more comprehensive way of thinking about streets that really takes account for all the people that live and move through an area, rather than just let's design for cars. So that's the broad approach of complete streets. And what we suggest, the best way to do complete streets is it's not just, oh, let's go get some, asphalt and shovels and start building. Is you start with complete streets policy, and that's going to ensure that the rules and practices around complete streets are really set in, they're on the books, and they're going to continue beyond just 1 year, 2 years, or whatever grant we got this time. It's going to be it's about changing the way you do things. And so we suggest that all cities, towns, states, MPOs, anybody that can, should create a complete streets policy. And you see what you're seeing here in this map is the growth of complete streets policies across the country. So when the idea was first proposed in early 2000s, there was almost no complete streets policies, but over time, it's an idea that has really grown. And you can see the spread here. Now, as of our most recent census of complete streets policies, there's over 1,700, which is fantastic. That's great. We're really excited to see that. But that's far from the totality. As you can see, this map is far from filled in. So there's a long way to go. Nashville, I'm happy to say, if you are not familiar, does have a complete streets policy. As of 2023, there is this executive order that you're seeing a screenshot of here on the screen. It was, yeah, passed by the mayor most recently, and it's pretty strong, frankly. We've done a quick review of it and find it has a lot of really good elements in it. So we rate it pretty highly. I think out of 100, it scores in the 80s, which means it's not perfect, but it's very good. The thing is, just passing a policy is the first step. That's a very important step, but that's the first step, right? It's only on paper, you know, if it's only on paper, that's not really worth that much. It has to translate into real changes internally and externally. So it means changing the way that you do things in the Department of Transportation or in other departments that have, that overlap with these responsibilities. It means doing things not just in the 1 year, not just when the current mayor is in office, but what about the next administration, the administration after that, and after that? This has to be a continual process of improvement and refining and improvement over time. And so while we do say that every place should create a good complete streets policy, many of them do, and some places are able to really turn that into action. Other places have just this great policy that sits on the shelf and collects dust, and we really don't want to see that for Nashville. We hope that this executive order is really going to be the first stepping stone into a really successful drive towards complete streets. And there are some promising signs. It's not just on paper. We have seen some action, and at Smart Growth America, we worked with Nashville as part of our Complete Streets Leadership Academy. And here's a cool project I want to point out on Dickerson Pike, where there were multiple design elements implemented to make the place better and safer for pedestrians. This is a really participatory approach with the Nashville Youth Design Team. You can see they are here really painting and illustrating, hey, this is a place where pedestrians are going to be, and they're also reducing the width of the intersection here. A lot of the intersections across the country, as well as in Nashville, are rounded, which allows cars to go to really whip around those turns at high speeds without slowing down. It also increases the distance that pedestrians have to walk. So you can see what they're doing here is they're painting here at the side of the intersection, and that is, raising visibility for pedestrians, but it's also shortening the distance that they're going to have to use to cross. And here is the full project. You can see multiple design elements here. So this is a place that was suggested or selected because it was particularly dangerous for pedestrians to cross, despite having high foot traffic in this area. So you see there were protected lane added over on the side for these multiple crosswalks added on this parking lot, which has multiple entrances. So to really raise the visibility, up towards the top, you see there's a pedestrian refuge island that's added. So rather than having to cross 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5 lanes all at once, pedestrians can cross 2 lanes, wait in the middle, and then cross the other 2. So things like this are done to really, improve the safety and comfort of pedestrians. But of course, this is just one project. Nashville has many, many other areas that could use this kind of approach. And I'm going to show one that I found that Nashville has done recently that I think is really cool. This is a area 31st Avenue, and we just look at this street. You see some of the similarities to the images on the previous scene, as well as the intersection that I showed before. You see, this is an area. This is a photo from just January 2023, so not too long ago, and you can see that it had many 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 lanes of traffic. You've got some cars parked over on the side. There's no crosswalk, although this is a housing on the right, and it looks like maybe offices here on the left. So this is an area where people are living, people are working, but it's going to be really difficult to get through here on a bicycle or by walking. But the city did a Complete Streets Vision Zero project in this area and really transformed it. This is what it looks like today. And so you can just see the before and after. Before, after. And you see a lot of those design elements. So instead of having so many lanes to cross, now there are just 3 lanes to cross for pedestrians. The distance has really been shortened because of these bump outs, as well as the pedestrian refuge island here in the middle. We've got a crosswalk now where there wasn't one before. And there's it looks like a flashing signal over here on the sides to alert cars that, hey, there's a pedestrian here, you need to stop or slow down. So things like this can be done, and Nashville, has been doing it, but of course the scale is huge. The need is very great. So these are the kinds of projects that I'm really hoping to see more of as Nashville makes progress on Complete Streets. So those are the things I wanted to highlight in relation to Complete Streets. Just remember, Complete Streets are for everyone, and Nashville can do Complete Streets. This is not a foreign concept that is being, trying to drop in from Manhattan into Nashville. This is something that the city can do and has been doing, step by step, but we really hope to see more of it going forward. So that's Complete Streets. Now I want to introduce Tiffany. And she, actually, Tiffany, if you want to say a little bit about yourself, I'll allow you, the floor to do that, and then tell us about Vision Zero.
Sure. Thanks so much for the introduction, Dustin, and for kicking us off. And thanks to Smart Growth America for including us in this conversation around sort of the relationship between Vision Zero and Complete Streets. My name is Tiffany Smith, and I'm the program manager for Vision Zero Network. We are a national nonprofit that helps practitioners, policymakers, decision makers set and advance their goals of Vision Zero, which is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. I know Nashville has a Vision Zero action plan. I've taken a look at it. It's really quite strong, and we've actually featured it in previous resources and webinars. So excited about all of the exciting work that's happening in Nashville, both from the Vision Zero and Complete Streets end. And so with that, I don't know, Dustin, if you're able to press next, maybe it'll load. Okay, perfect. And so just to kind of set the stage, talk a little bit about what Vision Zero is. As I mentioned, it's a strategy or approach to eliminate all deaths and severe injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. I usually like to start off and emphasize that it's not a slogan or a tagline or even a program. I think with all of the sort of stepped up commitments we're seeing at the federal level and more communities adopting Vision Zero, it could be kind of construed as just like a tagline. And so given all of the excitement, I just want to be clear that it really is indicative or representative of a fundamental shift or a paradigm shift in how we think about and do roadway safety work. And I think it really builds off of Complete Streets, which is really about changing the rules and practices around street design. Next slide. So I'll just talk a little bit about like Vision Zero in action. Just to kind of distill this down to kind of 3 key elements or themes. Main first point is it's really about shifting from the ease or the traditional approach, which sort of silos this work into like education, engineering, enforcement, equity, I think, and emergency services, to the safe system approach, which has safe, in everything. So safe people, safe vehicles, safe street design, safe speeds. And part of safe speeds means like explicitly prioritizing safety over speed, prioritizing safety over vehicle throughput, as well as advancing racial and health equity as part of your Vision Zero work. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the safe system approach and sort of what that looks like. Next slide. So Vision Zero is grounded in the safe system approach. And essentially what we like to say is if Vision Zero is the goal, then the safe system approach is ultimately like how we get there. And so the safe system approach is really grounded in public health principles of prevention. I have actually a public health background by training, and we use what's called this health impact pyramid to help us discern like which strategies or sort of which strategies require the most individual effort and are kind of limited in reach, and which ones require the least individual effort and are kind of further in scope, to help us sort of discern which strategies are going to kind of reach entire populations. And so I've included this image actually of the safe system pyramid, which has actually been directly adapted from the health impact pyramid, and essentially emphasizes that the strategies that really work at the lower levels of the pyramid, such as addressing the built environment via complete streets, or socioeconomic factors, this can be safe and affordable transit, access to critical destinations, will really have the largest impact on safety because they are not dependent on individuals or other factors that influence individuals, such as like their income, where they live, their lifestyle, culture, on being effective. And so this means and looks like, redesigning roadways, adding life-saving technology in vehicles, whether that's like intelligent speed assistance or lowering speed limits. And so along with its use as a framework, it also differs from the traditional approach in a few ways. Next slide. Instead of trying to really focus on improving human behavior, it is really focused on designing and accounting for human mistakes and limitations. And I think many could argue like that is also an element of complete streets design. When you have dedicated space for people walking, people biking, people taking transit, it's also in kind of building that into the environment. But to kind of illustrate this, for instance, because we talk a lot about both street design, but also all of the factors and all of the tools that you can use in cultivating safe streets. So many within the E's, like education is like a critical component traditionally in roadway safety work. And these can come in the form of like PR or safety campaigns. For instance, many safety campaigns might emphasize, that people walking should wear like bright colors, maybe avoid walking at night to avoid the risk of a crash. But these campaigns don't really take into account the reality of like the built environment for everyone, which may be plagued by insufficient street lighting or no sidewalks, or even the realities of an individual situation. Maybe they can't avoid commuting at night. Maybe they have a job that requires them to wear a dark uniform. And so not really sort of taking into account the things that are putting an individual, like why they might be commuting and what sort of elements that make our built environments unsafe in the first place. Next slide. Instead of making changes or safety changes in reaction or in response to when a crashes occur, the safe system approach instead takes a more proactive and preventative approach. So using past trends and patterns to identify likely future problem areas. And so, for example, here in Seattle, high speeds were identified as like a leading contributor to their serious injury and fatal collisions, specifically for people walking. And so they found from a 2018 pilot that they could actually change or lower the speed limit sign, and that would still reduce vehicle speeds. And so as a result, the city just proactively took this approach of lowering speed limits across the entirety of the city, and saw a reduction on 70% of their arterial roadways. Of course, you do want to also accompany those speed limit changes with the street design, but just an example of like scaling up simple changes that we know can work. Next slide. Safe vehicles. So instead of, this sort of emphasis on like allowing vehicles to kind of get bigger, or what I'm seeing a lot and learning from other advocates on the ground is that a lot of people feel like they need a bigger vehicle to feel safe in their own vehicle. And so this is kind of contributing to like vehicles getting bigger and bigger at a cost to safety, especially for those moving outside of cars. And so the safe system approach is really about taking steps to align vehicle safety standards with safety priorities for everyone, not just people within vehicles. So this again might look like integrating technologies like intelligent speed assistance that alerts drivers when they're exceeding the posted speed limit. Or even establishing or implementing new safety standards that consider those outside of the vehicle. So like I know NHTSA just proposed a new rule that would require new vehicles to be designed and include tests for head-to-hood impacts. This is a great example of this. Next slide. I guess so now that we've kind of done some like baseline on like kind of Vision Zero in general, I guess we can talk a little bit about like their similarities and differences. I think for me, or Vision Zero, I would say there's like a really focus on street design, but along with other non-design actions. Some examples can be an emphasis on sort of interdepartmental collaboration, particularly with your public health department, or even that can look like collaboration with community, getting their input. We know that communities of color are underrepresented in serious injury data. And so pairing your data, which is often sort of police data, with community engagement can also kind of paint a fuller picture. And then sort of related to that, given the fact that many of these communities, particularly communities of color or low-income communities, are already facing a disproportionate burden of safety risk, we are seeing as well kind of simultaneously this like twin public health crises of sort of Black drivers or low-income drivers being more likely to be pulled over and more likely to be searched by police. And this is because like while enforcement can function as a tool in roadway safety, a large majority of traffic stops are not actually safety related, therefore low level or administrative violations. And so this is not to say there's no role at all for enforcement in roadway safety, but currently the way it's being used is like at an expense to communities of color, low-income communities, and it's not necessarily contributing to safety. So really thinking about how can we make data-informed decisions, even for practices like enforcement. And this is something we are also exploring a lot in our own work at Vision Zero Network. We're actually in the process of developing recommendations. I realize I said a lot, so Dustin, go ahead.
No, that's cool. Yes, there are also some things over on the complete street side that I think that we do a little bit, where our approach differs a little bit, but I really want to draw your attention to the overlap, that middle section, right? And I'm sorry for, making you wait 30 minutes to hear the answer, but the answer is complete streets and Vision Zero are very, very, very compatible, right? The reason that we're doing this call together, the reason that we've done other things in the past together is because we have so much in common, right? So if you take one thing away from this webinar today, I want you to take away this middle area. That is, Vision Zero and Complete Streets both have the broad goal of improving road safety. They both prioritize design and design for safety over speed, right? Historically, we've designed for speed. We say, no, actually, safety should be the bottom line. Safety is the goal. Safety is the thing that really should be driving your decisions. And then how do you do that? You improve street design. We've talked about some different elements that can really do that. Emphasis on equity. yes, we both care about equity. Tiffany has just laid out some of the nuances of that, because of course it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, everybody should be safe. Everybody should be able to, get around in a way that they choose that's safe and dignified. But in the real world, different places for different reasons have been, faced discrimination, neglect over the years. So it's important to really start in those places, to really keep that in mind when you're going to make improvements, right? Rather than just say, well, let's just do what we've been doing all along, maybe a little bit better. No, the idea is let's go to those, identify those problems, those underserved, victimized parts of our society, and let's start there. Data driven, again, we're not just doing these things because, we feel like it or we have a hunch that this is going to work. It really needs to be based in the data, all right? Where are most crashes occurring? When are they occurring? Who is being affected? And really targeting, because the eventual goal, of course, is to, fix everything, but you should really start in the areas that have the greatest need first. And paradigm shift, as Tiffany said, this is not just about, oh, we're going to use some different words or, some different slogans. No, the idea, we need to rethink the way that we do transportation, frankly. These ideas and principles need to go from, oh, that would be nice, to that's how we do things, right? It's about establishing a new status quo that really prioritizes safety and mobility, dignity for all people. So that's really the important overlapping middle ground where we feel it makes sense for a place to prioritize all of these things. And we're going to, in the next slides, talk about places that have actually looked at both and worked with both. So some people ask us, well, we've already got Vision Zero, so we can't do complete streets, or we're doing complete streets, so we're really, but this is not a Coke versus Pepsi, Nike versus Adidas thing. You really can, and we say should, be doing both. And these are just a couple of examples of cities, some of which are amongst the safest for pedestrian safety in this country. El Paso, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, San Antonio, they all have, or in Milwaukee's case, soon will have the Complete Streets policy, as well as a Vision Zero action plan, as well as probably some related projects and other resources that if you really start digging, you could find. But I just want to highlight, and Nashville it could be on this list as well. We're going to talk about Nashville as well, because Nashville, as we've said, does have, as of last year, a complete streets policy and a Vision Zero action plan. So Nashville's in a good place. If you're on this call from Nashville, great. Now the next step is to actually implement those plans. If you're in a place other than Nashville, you can think about, does my community have a complete streets policy? Do we have a Vision Zero action plan? If not, can we? So we are going to talk a little bit about some of those places that are doing both simultaneously. So I'll hand it over to Tiffany. Tell us about Tacoma.
Thanks, Dustin. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, so this is some excerpts taken from Tacoma. They're small, Vision Zero community, or smaller, I should say, and also relatively new. I believe they adopted their plan about a year and a half ago. And they have both the Complete Streets and Vision Zero action plan, and they consistently reference throughout their action plan, their Complete Streets policy. They've adopted it as a best practice and as sort of their strategy and implementation around safe roads. They've integrated this checklist that sort of has paving projects, planned maintenance activities, and also uses that opportunity or leverages those opportunities to assess for other sort of safety design features in roadways. And they're also institutionalizing the use of this their complete streets checklist in trainings and project development procedures. I think it's a really great example of really institutionalizing these changes. Yeah, and just to echo Dustin's point, like complete streets sort of build towards Vision Zero, and I think vice versa. Next slide. Simultaneously, Tacoma's commitment to Vision Zero and complete streets has provided them an opportunity to really think about this idea of like self-enforcing roadways and rethink the role of enforcement in their roadway safety work. And so they are focusing enforcement on violations that most contribute to safety issues, such as speeding and sort of deprioritizing citations for non-safety related stops. But Tacoma is not the only community exploring this. Next slide. Minneapolis has also both Vision Zero and Complete Streets project, and they're also kind of really leaning into this idea of like self-enforcing roadways and complete streets as a tool of sort of encouraging the safer driving behavior that you want. And they have been also exploring the role of enforcement in their roadway safety work and how to kind of really focus on driving behaviors or dangerous driving behaviors that you maybe not necessarily can't target with street design. Next slide. And similarly, as you've heard, both Vision Zero and Complete Streets really emphasize that safety investments should be prioritized in historically underserved communities facing disproportionate safety risks. We have seen more and more that many communities will sort of map out their high injury network and by sort of analyzing data on deaths and severe injuries over a certain time. And I would say that's becoming more and more a best practice, or is a best practice in Vision Zero. But we're also seeing communities like Nashville and others who are really taking this like equity-centered approach to data. So they use data on the rate of those like living in poverty, lower rates of homeownership, concentration of active transportation users, concentration of carless households, and more. And they really layered that on their high injury network to really illustrate the relationship between the most dangerous streets and other indicators of vulnerability as a way to kind of assess or figure out how their safety investments should be prioritized and where they should be prioritized. Next slide. Similar to Nashville, other communities like Madison who also have like this layered high injury network to equitably direct funding resources and sort of work towards eliminating crash disparities. And as part of their equity analysis, they have they have implemented various actions around sort of better analysis for equity-oriented priorities, and sort of how to leverage and using this data and information to kind of see where these projects can be cross-cutting or leveraging in existing projects for potential safety treatments and improvements. Next slide.
All right, thank you for those deep dives, Tiffany. And yeah, just to sort of summarize, Nashville, as we said, is doing both. That's great. There are other places that are doing both as well, and it's important also to kind of look at other places to see what's going well, what's not going well, as Nashville continues on this path. So I wanted to take this time to do a brief, just to like share some of the FAQs that we get at Smart Growth America and Tiffany gets at Vision Zero Network, and to just kind of like answer them from our perspective. Hopefully that'll be helpful for you. And then we'll move into hear other questions that people might have. So the first one is, people say, all right, great. You showed earlier that map, Dustin, of Complete Streets policies spreading across the country, and Vision Zero has also been spreading, and yet pedestrian fatalities continue to go up. Why isn't it working? What's wrong with these approaches? So I'm going to let Tiffany answer this, because because this is a question that they get, it's a question we get, and
Yeah. Great question. I usually say to this that Vision Zero adoption and complete streets policies are really just like one step in a long process of actually making sort of this fundamental paradigm shift. Setting a goal and adopting a policy is really great, but at the end of the day, it's not necessarily making the change or making the difference. Even redesigning roads or lowering speed limits in a handful of problematic areas are really they're steps in the right direction, but they really are baby steps. And so to really see the changes we want to see, it's going to be a long process and it's going to take time, but we're seeing bright spots of really centering safety over vehicle throughput, really focusing on proactive and preventative interventions and not waiting for crashes or deaths or severe injuries to happen before we make these changes. And also integrating these ideas into agency culture and sort of onboarding. I recently learned that a community, whenever a new employee comes on, they do an onboarding on all things Vision Zero, all things complete streets, and sort of kind of starting off that way. So I think culture change around like safety and what that looks like and how we can make those changes to reach Vision Zero and achieve complete streets for everyone. It's going to take time to get there. And I think ultimately it really comes down to this idea of like, addressing the root causes of crashes. So speeds, this idea we talk a lot about kinetic energy, setting safe speed limits and roads that are designed in ways that accompany or are sort of coordinated with the speed limit. And until we really like making big changes, we can't really expect to see drastic changes at the same time. And so just would really emphasize it's really about like moving past this kind of like piecemeal approach to safety and really thinking about and integrating opportunities to proactively make safety the first choice in all aspects of this work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you said it great. We say sometimes here we've had decades of bad, backwards development, building our roads and highways around speed. It takes time to undo some of that damage. But if we look at the places that have really strongly embraced complete streets and Vision Zero and have done it, in action, not just in the policy. Policy's the first step, but then in the actions, as Tiffany has said, you can start to see bright spots. Okay, so should we do complete streets and Vision Zero? Answer, as we said, is yes, absolutely. We think that they're highly complementary. Frankly, it's just sort of two sides with a lot of overlap in the middle. And I think that if you do them both, you're going to improve road safety for sure, but you'll see a lot of other benefits as well, societal benefits, health benefits, economic, everything. So yes, we strongly encourage, and because they're so interrelated, it need not be thought of as like, well, we're going to spend a whole bunch of money on complete streets and a whole bunch of money on Vision Zero. There's also a lot of overlap in the types of things that you can do. So yes, do it strategically, and you'll see lots of benefits. The third one here, what about speed management? And this is a question that you put there, Tiffany, and frankly, I'm going to let you have it because I think you're better positioned to answer. So tell us.
Yeah, happy to answer this. We get this question a lot, and Dustin, feel free if I speak wrong. But the way that I interpret this is, within Vision Zero, as I mentioned, the safe system approach is what underpins Vision Zero, and a kind of core pillar of that is this idea of safe speeds. And so Vision Zero really views speed management as a critical component and reducing speed limits and then adding in traffic calming measures to accompany the reduced speed limit as being like really critical. And I just want to also emphasize that it's not really this idea. I think sometimes in like the status quo, it's like, oh, there's these like bad apples or these people who are like speeding like over the limit, but it's really about collectively managing speeds as opposed to speeders. And then I view like sort of complete streets. I think it's about incorporating traffic calming measures, and I would say maybe the primary focus is not necessarily like speed management, but rather ensuring that street design is naturally supporting safe speeds and by accommodating various modes. Uh, Dustin, let me know if I didn't represent
Absolutely.
that well.
Yeah, you mentioned traffic calming. Just the way that we've designed a lot of streets is, we design them like airport runways, right? They're
Hmm.
straight, they're flat, they're wide, there's nothing around, and that really just says to drivers, go as fast as you want. And even if you lower the speed limit with a sign, it's still only going to have a modest impact because the driver is still like reacting to their environment. They're still
Hmm.
thinking, all right, well, this is a runway. But if you design it in a way that tells them, hey, this is not a runway, there are people here, there are things around, you need to be paying attention. Then even if you didn't change the speed limit sign, the natural cues are going to tell this person, okay, we need to, slow it down. And that picture that I showed earlier, 31st Street, is a great example. And I'm going to just quickly circle back through and just look at the difference. How fast, if you were a driver, and many of the people probably on this call, drive or can drive, how fast do you think you could go on this road? I'm I'm looking at it. I'm thinking I'm gonna go 40 miles an hour. I'm gonna, there's nothing that tells me to slow down. Uh, Regardless of what the sign is, the natural cues tell me go, go good 40, go maybe go 50. This road, on the other hand, same area, exact same stretch, is telling me different things. It's telling me, oh, it's kind of narrow here. There might be a pedestrian coming across here. I got to pay attention. I'm probably just going to naturally feel the need to drive slower in this road. So these are some of the things that I think Tiffany is getting at with, we set the speed limit, we can lower them, but we can also design in a way that tells people, no, this is the appropriate speed to go here.
I just wanted to add real quick, one thing I forgot to mention. Of course, like with Vision Zero, we have an emphasis, at the bottom, working at the bottom of the pyramid, built environment. But of course, safe vehicles, like sort of thinking about how our vehicles are designed, and also thinking about technology like intelligent speed assistance to kind of assist these efforts. But ultimately, like sort of street design is the main goal. I realized I forgot to mention that earlier.
No,
Thanks.
that's great. Last one, the main guiding principles of Vision Zero and Complete Streets. I feel like we've shared those. I'm just going to go back, and if anybody wants to take a screenshot or take the notes, that center section is really what I want you to take away. That Complete Streets and Vision Zero overlap in this overall goals for road safety, design for safety over speed, improve the street design, focus on equity, focus on the data, and really think of this as a paradigm shift rather than just a change of terminology. It's not just one little project here or there. It's a new way of thinking and a new way of doing things. So with that, I'm going to say thank you all for your time, and I want to hear from you all. What questions or thoughts do you all have from what we've shared today? If you want to raise hands or come off mute. Anybody have anything? If not, I'm going to start calling on people. Looks like Robert Johnson. Yeah, longtime listener.
Good afternoon, Dustin. I just thought I'd save everyone else.
Uh-huh. Sure. What's on your mind, Robert?
You mention a lot there about the positives of doing these programs. And in any given program where you want behavior change, usually carrots and sticks work. And I'm going to go right ahead and tell you that carrots don't work on their own. Are there any sticks that you would recommend applying in this case? That's a very politically, charged thing to do. But are there any things that you would say, yeah, legislatively you should go ahead and ban something or force people to do something?
Are you talking about like individual people, or you're thinking about like municipalities?
No, I'm thinking about policy and municipality and code. Everything that you put on the screen says how great it would be to do something. It doesn't tend to prevent people from doing things like building wider roads or building straight roads or adding capacity. You don't tend to have the sticks in there. Lots of carrots, not so many sticks.
All right. Tiffany, you have any reactions?
Well, I think a part of that goes back to like sort of this idea of institutionalizing some of these changes. So it goes beyond just the commitment. There needs to be sort of buy-in across all levels. Like, so you have the mayor, your public health department needs to see their role, law enforcement in the sense of like rethinking enforcement and traffic safety, business development, sort of how this impacts their work. Like everybody needs to view sort of their role in roadway safety. I think that contributes to sort of this idea of like culture change, like building buy-in and allowing everyone to really see how their work relates to this. And then I also think, and I don't know if folks feel differently, but I think there's like a lot of asymmetrical information going on from like the public's understanding of like how a lot of these safety sort of decisions and like I think a lot of people think that the way we design roads is like the safest it can be. And so I think like community engagement and public engagement around like what do they want to see in their communities? Like, do they want to see connected sidewalks and bikeways? Do they want that? Because I also think as well, like the public can play a big role in as well in sort of like holding leaders or organizations or agencies accountable to these changes. Oftentimes we talk about like education as like do the right thing, but I also think of education as like information and like empowerment with information about like the changes that you can make. So that's kind of like my first pass thought to your question.
My thought is, what we really advocate for is policies. And so my head instantly goes to, we advise you create the strongest type of policy you possibly can, and with the strongest possible language. So frankly, executive orders are good, but they kind of they might not have the same strength as, say, an ordinance, right? If you pass these things in ordinance with very specific and strong language, you talked about lane widths and stuff, really getting specific about what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And if that is a law, then if somebody's trying to circumvent that or then you're breaking the law, right? So that's why we really say it's really important not to just like talk about this or make some statements, but to really get it on the books in the strongest, most binding language and rules possible. So that's where I usually go with this, and that's it. The states, MPOs, anybody that has a role in this should be passing the strongest possible laws that will last over time.
I would also add, I mean, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is a great like grant opportunity that you can also leverage. Like, hey, if we're not doing safety centered projects, we're not going to get this money because this is what USDOT is prioritizing. They're prioritizing like space for people walking and biking and equity emphasis, Vision Zero adoption, etc. And so I think also leveraging funding opportunities, especially since they go directly to jurisdictions, it doesn't have to bypass the state. It's also a really, I think, critical leverage point as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Robert. Do we have other questions, people, or reactions from people to what they've heard today? All right, I think we answered everything. Great job, Tiffany. I think that, does anybody want to share anything? You know, you all in Nashville have been doing Complete Streets and Vision Zero. Do you want to tell us how it's gone for you? Anybody who's had direct work on trying to think about these things together? Going once. All right. Well, I think in that case, we.
I'm so sorry. I actually have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure. Ashley.
This one might be pretty abstract, but do you all, or how do you address people actually utilizing crossing infrastructures by like pressing the button, for example, especially when it comes to complete streets, and really like especially when it comes to complete streets as they come in, but in general, do you experience a lot of not pushing the button, or is there like a lack of trust that the button's even gonna work? I'm curious of both of your opinions in that regard.
Okay, so you're talking about it like crosswalks. Some places have a button that you push and that'll activate or change the light or activate a flasher or something like that. And you want to know what we think about them?
Not only what you think about, but how have you addressed that on a public scale? Like when it comes to education, for example, is that something that you have found yourself either noticing or stating in the lines of education?
Tiffany?
Well, I would say this. It's not necessarily like specifically pushing the button and crossing is not necessarily something we're like really exploring in terms from an education perspective. But I will say like the built environment does dictate behavior. And so like just personally as an example, like and I live in New York City and there's plenty of full walking and biking infrastructure everywhere, but there's a big gap between the crosswalk that I can access and where I live. And I still find myself crossing the street where there's no crosswalk because I'd have to go way out of my way to get to the other side. When I'm trying to get to the subway, it would actually add an extra 10 minutes, even though I'm only like 5 minutes away. And so I would say like, I think of course, like you want people to be safe when crossing the road. But I think it maybe points to a bigger issue that there's maybe not enough crossing infrastructure, the road, that the signal timing is off. Maybe, you know, again, it's maybe like prioritizing the vehicles over the pedestrians. I guess it just depends. That's sort of like my first impression. Yeah,
Yes.
usually I would say like behavior dictates, like the environment dictates the behavior. How the street is designed dictates the behavior. So if people are crossing and they're not pushing the button, it's probably because they're waiting a really, really long time. And they need to, like, we don't know, is there a transit stop on the other side? Yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Yes, I think trust is an interesting angle that you brought up, Ashley. And that is not just the built environment, but there are some sociocultural elements there as well. Unfortunately, we don't have time to dig deeper into that. Our contact information, I'm going to share really quick on the screen again. In case you all Oh, this is a photo. This is a photo from another presentation. This is me in front of a giant truck, everybody. Trucks are not good for children. They're not great for people with disabilities either. This is our contact information. If anybody wants to follow up about that, Ashley, if you want to like unpack the thoughts a bit more and get our ideas maybe, or anybody else wants to contact us about anything else, here's the way to do that. We really appreciate your all's time. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really great.
Thanks, everybody.